Welcome back in, everybody, to the JAKIB postgame show. A disappointing postgame here after Week 4. Eagles lose 33-16 and just get throttled by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers today. As Sileo said in the open, it was never really close out there. Johnny Mack, I'm going to come to you first here. I'm going to go to the defense.
Hold on, Zander. Here's how close it was. Receive or defer.
That was it. That was the most competitive point in the football game today. I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball here, guys. I mean, look, we were hard on Jalen, and I get it, but that defense was pitiful today. John, what was your thoughts on Vic Fangio's game plan coming into this game?
Well, look, when you don't tackle, the game plan's going to look bad, and they didn't tackle. So I don't know. I got to blame that on the players first, because if it were consistent, I said that at halftime. I realize everybody's going to blame the coaches, but I mean, what they're not out there playing. They do the same tackle circuit to start every practice every week. You know, sometimes they're good tackling, sometimes they're not good tackling. Today, I feel very comfortable saying, and I haven't seen much other football around today. I'll watch some of the games a little bit later. As I mentioned, I was watching a little bit of Green Bay trying to come back. That's about it. But I feel pretty comfortable saying they're going to be the worst tackling team in the NFL this week. I feel pretty comfortable saying that nobody else is going to have a tackling performance like that. Because it was that bad. Dan, maybe you got better. Why on certain days do guys don't tackle?
Well, again, you went into that football game and you were mentally beat getting off the bus. I mean, you went into this looking at the numbers of the Buccaneers, and you went in there and you went 24th, 27th offensively. Quarterback's only averaging 181 yards. And you forgot what they did to you in the playoff game. Every single game, every week, as you know, John, is a chapter in a book. Every chapter is different in a book. No team is the same as it was week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Next week, the Eagles will be a completely different team, or the week when they come out of the bye, they'll be a completely different team. That's what this league is. This is about in-game adjustments. This was really, again, it was like the Eagles conceded with all the injuries. They were going to go in and give their best. That looked like, hey, we're going to give our best effort, not an effort to win.
To your point,
they give a winning effort.
To your point, Dan, and I mentioned this all week with Zander, Tampa Bay laid an egg at home against Denver. Like, I guarantee you.
And whooped them pretty good, too.
No, that Denver destroyed them.
Yeah.
On their home fields. And I guarantee you the Buccaneers went into that game saying, oh, this is a week off. Bo Nix is playing quarterback. And they just waxed them. The Broncos destroyed them. And I was saying all week, I do not like this spot for the Philadelphia Eagles, because I know Tampa's going to be on their P's and Q's after that performance. In some ways, this is bad to have the bye week, because AJ was close to coming back. He would have been back if they played this week.
John, how effective, though, when he hasn't run with a hamstring? We're not talking about an arm injury. We're talking about a hamstring injury.
I'll be a hell of a lot more effective than Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson, and Paris Campbell.
Touche.
And, Lane's going to get through the protocol. He almost got through the protocol this week, and Devontae's probably going to get through the protocol, and all of a sudden you have those guys back in that same – now they got a week off. They're not going to have that same urgency coming off this shitty performance. So we'll see how that shakes out. But in some ways, I'd like to see them get right back on the field, because they know – I guarantee you they know right now how poorly they performed. And all the people who's going to blame all the coaching staff, take a step back. Brian Johnson was the problem. How's the offense look now? Where's the motion? What's that doing for you when you don't have players on the field executing? Vic Fangio, greatest defensive coordinator in the NFL. Everybody loves him. Everybody reveres at him. What's that doing for you? players first.
I will say this once again, though, John. You know, everyone is, I said this the entire offseason about the defense. There were just massive question marks for me everywhere. I mean, you had a project edge rusher you signed. Nolan Smith hasn't shown anything yet in any way being the 30th pick. You had Jordan Davis, who's been up and down. Brian Baldinger and I have been very critical of his effort, especially when he gets a couple plays under his belt and he has stretch plays or he goes into the season and he starts disappearing. And Jalen Carter, how is he going to respond? The linebacking core, as we know, the Eagles do not make a huge investment. They made a third-round pick. That guy doesn't look very good to me right now, but we'll see. The secondary guys, again, I mean, Darius Slay got owned today. He was absolutely destroyed today.
And by the way, Tampa Bay dropped so many passes. If they caught those passes, now they're known for a lot of drops.
Throw for 450 yards, John, if they catch those passes.
Yeah.
I mean, Darius Slay was terrible in that game out there. And you know what? For Quinyon Mitchell, they did target him a bunch of times, but I saw him do a nice job on Mike Evans. I'm not pissed at him at all in any way. He's actually a silver lining guy. You're playing him. You're doing something you didn't do a year ago. You're getting your young. Eventually, he's got to start and keep continuing to get better and better. This is the only way he's going to get better. I'm rolling his ass out there, and I am fine with him. But that defense is under talent, man. I mean, there's just not enough talent on it.
Another nothing burger from Bryce Huff, by the way.
Yeah, well, the edge rushers, once again. I mean, boy,
not a tackle for a loss. He picked up a tackle.
Nolan Smith seems ahead of him now, and Nolan, you know, I love
when John does those pregnant pauses.
At one point they got Nolan in coverage against Chris Godwin. I'm like,
why?
You know, now granted, it's a curveball, and you're trying to, you know, fool the quarterback, and I have no problem throwing a curveball occasionally. But boy, when you do get those matchups, like, what are you doing, dude? You're out thinking yourself. When you develop a scheme and say, I'm going to put Nolan Smith and he's going to be forced to handle Chris Godwin on a particular play. As Jonathan Gannon would say, that's tough duty. That's not tough duty. That's stupid duty. And the Eagles got caught on that one. But yeah, I don't like this scheme, and it just keeps going. And then you see what it's doing to Bryce Huff. I'm like, I like Vic, but I'd like to see it. I'd like to see a more aggressive scheme.
How about this too, John? I mean, I had no idea that Liam Cohn, until I talked to Bruce Arians, had never called plays until this year.
Yeah.
He had never been a play caller. And for whatever reason, this guy was dialing it up today. He had never.
I'll tell you why, Dan. It's the most overrated damn thing in the world. How about that? It's the most overrated damn thing in the world. Everything you do is done during the week. So I think there's a lot of people that make the assumption that these guys are rolling out there on Sunday or whatever day the game is on and just pulling out play calls. Oh, I'm going to pull this out of the wind. Everything's on the sheet. Everything is in categories. Third and medium, third and long, third and short.
Yeah, but John, there's still an art to calling it.
Are you suggesting that you have a game plan on Tuesday, and when you get into a game, you don't have a feel for the fact that the secondary of the Bucs and the defensive front seven are getting more pressure than you thought? You're not going to adjust.
Feel is a real thing.
Yeah,
and I'm saying, but everything is already on that sheet.
You're talking situationally on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Everything has already been prepared for on that sheet, and if it's not, you did a bad job, and you're probably going to be unsuccessful. But the point that these guys are going off schedule and doing that, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It's prepared for during the week. And anytime you see a great play call, it's generally, as I said, great execution by the players. And anytime you see a bad play call, it's generally bad execution by the players. Not always. I'm not saying there's plenty of times, and I tell the story all the time, Doug Peterson, plenty of times I call the wrong play, Doug would say, and the players save my ass. And there's other times I call the perfect play and you don't even know it because the left guard misses a block. And you go, damn it, I had him. But
yeah, but there is still like an art
nobody knows.
game feel, right? Like, and I think that's what Todd Bowles does great.
Shane was great at feel,
right?
Shane
and I think even Todd Bowles on the other side today,
great
right?
At feel.
Like your offense gets going, he knows the perfect.
Vic is actually very good at feel.
Oh yeah,
you know, but generally, you know what feel is, and I, you know, for the people that did watch the old XFL, there was a great, you know, they would mic up the coaches, and boy, I forget the offensive coordinator. I'll think of it in a second, but it was great because you don't get to see it, and they were just, you know, really moving the ball with tempo and running the same play over and over again. And all he would say to the quarterback, do it again, do it again, do it again. That was the play call.
That sounds like Galen Hall.
If they're not stopping it, and Shane would, you know, Shane was great at the callback. I like to call it, like in comedy, you got callbacks, the old jokes. He would have the callback. He would set you up with something in the first half, run the same play as a decoy. You think it's the same play because you already saw it. The best example of this was the Zach Pascal touchdown. You could say that because you didn't have a lot of them, where they ran the same play and all of a sudden they fake it. Zach Pascal, everybody thinks he's a blocker. He just leaks out. He's wide open. Got a touchdown. Look, all I'm saying is this bullshit narrative of, oh, you got to call this as a bad play call. This is, you know, Zander, I talk about this ad nauseum. It's bullshit. It's a bullshit narrative. You got great coordinators and you're playing shitty football. Nobody's going to say Vic Fangio isn't a good defensive coordinator. If they are, they're wrong. Nobody's going to say Kellen Moore's a bad offensive coordinator. If they are, they're wrong. So why are they still playing shitty football? You could say it about Brian Johnson because he's not proven. You can say it about Sean Desai because he's not proven. You could say they're shitty because they haven't done anything. These guys are proven commodities.
But let me ask you something, though, John. If you're a defensive guy like Vic Fangio and you hire him and you know he plays too high safety and you know he's not going to press the corners and you know he's not going to blitz, isn't it the organization's obligation to tool the roster to fit that coordinator style of play?
That's a big thing. We talked about it on the pregame show.
Okay, so to me here,
Vic doesn't play too high. In fact, Vic does a whole
they were
bunch
15 to 20 yards. Brady was saying it the whole game too. I mean,
yeah, but he generally, and I have to look at the game. Generally, he's his default setting this year has been cover 8, which is cover 2 on half the field and quarters on the other half. That's generally been his default coverage. But he throws a bunch of different coverages, but that's the coverage he's used the most this year. For a while, he was all quarters. When he first started this, it was all quarters, 80% of the time. Then he turned into more cover 3. Now he's more cover 8. It looks like cover 2. That's what it's supposed to look like because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make the quarterback think it's cover 2 and then post-snap spin off into the coverage you called, which more often than not has been cover 8 this year. I'd be surprised if it wasn't in this game, but maybe it was. Maybe it was. But the look is always going to be not always, not 100% of the time, but the vast majority of the time it's going to look like cover 2 and then spin off into something else.
John, let me ask you a question then. If we had the guys on the field, playoff game, they didn't have AJ, obviously. They had Devontae, they had DeAndre Swift, they had all them dudes. You think if they're a full team, they beat that Buck team today?
If AJ and Devontae and
Yeah, and Lane, you think they beat them today?
they have a good chance.
Well, that defense had basically nobody missing, and they couldn't stop a nosebleed. You gave me a great point in the pregame show. I'm like, wait, Sileo's right. He's like, I'm just going to take the better quarterback. So a lot of times in the NFL, that's the safe bet. Well, today, Jalen Hurts was not the bet. Baker Mayfield looked like a star out there.
Well, I do think Baker's underrated, but
I do too. I agree.
Yeah, let that much. I couldn't believe what I was watching.
I still thought I agree with Sileo's point pregame. I'm like, oh, Jalen Hurts is the better quarterback. They should have a chance to win this football game. Well, Baker Mayfield had a field day today. And I think he threw the ball 47 times.
Imagine if everybody caught the catchable passes.
Exactly.
450. That thing would have been a bigger blowout. Like John said, the score at the end just made that thing look a tad bit closer. That thing was never close, man. That game was never close at all.
Like I said, they had the one opportunity to get back.
Yep, there was one opportunity, one little door opening there when it came out of the half. There was a door opening.
Hurts fumble. That was a bad moment for a fumble in that.
It was a momentum killer.
Yeah, it was a major momentum killer. I mean, they had a chance there to get back within striking distance, and especially with the turnaround too. You know, where Keely Ringo returned the 2-point conversion, or it was a blocked point after, but it turned into a 2-point conversion. That was really a momentum swing as well, because it should have been a 3-score game there, and then it became a 2-score game again. Yeah. You know, but the Eagles just never capitalized.
Guys, let me ask you this: are you disappointed they're 2-2 heading into their bye?
No, I thought they would struggle a little bit early this season, and the goal was to get better. Last year, what did 10-1 get you? Not much. I mean, You want to be playing your best football at the end. Look, I can't be, while at the same time, I can't be upset they lost the game.
Circumstances have dictated also this 2-2 start. I mean,
yeah, I can't be upset they lost the game without A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson. I can't get upset about it. Look, I thought it would be closer. I didn't think they'd be this bad defensively. I had 2017 Tampa winning, so I didn't think they'd be this bad defensively. I thought they'd be very clunky offense. They're clunky offensively without A.J. Brown, even when they have Devontae. So I thought that part would be clunky as usual, and it was. And now when they get them back and they get everybody else back, it'll get better. How much better? But I didn't like this spot, even if they had everybody. That's why I said typically, if they have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson completely healthy, typically I'm going to predict they beat Tampa in this spot. But that Denver game, that changed it all for me, because what you were just saying, Dan, this is a week-to-week league.
Yep.
And you make overcorrections. And Tampa Bay played so poorly against Denver at home, they were going to be locked in. And they were locked in from play one. It proved to be right. They were locked in. And they played well on top of the Eagles playing poorly. So when you have that, you have the kind of performance you had today.
Remember this, John. Tampa Bay is built to be inconsistent right now. They're just, I mean, they could lay another 8 next week.
Same thing about the Eagles.
They could. I'm not saying they're not. I said that at the beginning of the year that they've made for. They have a championship style and a championship offensive roster, in my opinion. That defense is 2 years away. I think that defense is going to be good next year, not this year. You're hoping it's better by November and December, so it gives you a shot in January. But to me, I never thought that defense. Now, you were awful last year in pass defense. Today, you were awful in pass defense. But like John said, you're not looking at that defense. Remember what Vic Fangio said in the preseason? What do you think of your defense? Wake me up in week 8 or 12 or whatever it was. Let me know then how good we're going to be, and I'll let you know then. Anybody with a brain knows. Just like Kansas City last year, John, when they had all them wideouts they were trying to work in. They were playing like a 7-win team. Beat at Arrowhead by the Raiders, a shitty Raider team. And then they end up playing like champions on a 14-win team at the end of the year. You're hoping for that. Right now, that defense, here, first 4 weeks, here's the trend. You cannot stop the run. You did it great in 1 week. You have problems covering backs and tight ends out of the backfield. You play so far off the ball, the underneath pass. They were, like Prince said in here,
you can't tackle either, Sills. Add that, make that number one.
Well, that's If you're going to play,
destroyed by the underneath passes and the missed tackles today. They were destroyed.
Yeah, if you're going to play soft, you better tackle when they catch it, and they didn't tackle.
You have to have, and like John said, if you're going to play, this goes back to construction of the roster again, Zander. If you're going to have that kind of style of defense, you better have some of the best open field tacklers on and in the league for you to have that style. For you to have a cover corner who basically can't cover and hit like Isaiah Rodgers ain't going to get anybody on the ground. Huss, you better be a sure tackler. How many times did you see those guys over pursuing? Like even Quinyon Mitchell, he put his head down, overran a play. That's okay for a rookie. I get it. It's going to happen. Pursuit angles. He's going to get better at it. But, dude, like John said just now, if you're going to play that kind of style, you better have some of the best open field tacklers in the league.
Here's my problem with the Eagles. We're through 4 games here, and I threw the opener out because of the shitty field. I don't think you can evaluate it properly.
Which, as we get more context, becomes questionable.
No, I still throw it out because what are you evaluating?
Yeah, but I'm saying if they go 5 straight games on a good field where they look the same as they did on the bad field, it's like, was the field a difference?
Pressure's been a problem. Pressure's been a problem all year.
Then I'm saying week 4, and you don't have AJ, you don't have like it's hard to evaluate this team right now. You know, did they play shit? What I can evaluate is their depth stinks.
Yeah,
and they need everything to be perfect if they want to win.
John, are you kind of shocked at the depth that not being as quality as it's been? Because 22 was tremendous depth. They're far from that 22 group where they had that kind of depth at pretty much almost every position. Because now, man, you lose a guy, you're sliding over a $20 million offensive guard to play center. I was like, what? Holy cow, what's the depth level they got even in the O-line here? I mean,
well, I'm more concerned about the receivers.
Receiving core.
Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not NFL caliber.
Those are practice squad guys.
John Ross hasn't played an NFL game since 2021. And I think if he was here, I think, in short order, he'd probably pass certainly Johnny Wilson and maybe even John Dotson. Paris Campbell's your best receiver on the field today. I mean, how is that possible? How is that possible?
Well, your top 2 guys are making $55 million. That's how it's possible. They chose to have 2 great ones, which I'm not going to fault them for. I'm not going to fault them for that. But the depth, I mean, they have no depth, but you can't have it all. I mean, you can't have
but you have to have
2
competent
guys who are top 12 in the league, and then
Zander,
also have 3 down roster that.
But you have to have competent.
Well, you do, but how many teams?
Yeah, I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about replacing AJ Brown for another. I constantly say you can't replace players
about
like
competent. Dude, get this. Nobody's great in Kansas City, but every guy in Kansas City is competent.
Well, you know who makes him competent?
Well, welcome to the $50 million club.
Yeah.
If you're that guy, like John said, you make that fucking guy better.
That's part of it, no doubt.
That's it right there. You answered it, Zander, right there.
Well, look, because I do agree with what John's saying. Like, look at the wide receiver group, but you would probably struggle in this league. You could go down 32 teams if you take away their top 2 wide receivers. I mean, yeah, it's not looking pretty with your wide receiving group on that day. That's going to be every team in the league.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but again, it's not this bad. Here's that 4 for 17, 2 for 11, 1 for 6. That's not, and that, by the way, all happened late in garbage time, really, with Dotson. All his 2 catches were late. Ross's was late. That was all in garbage time. So you scale it back to 4 for 17, whatever Paris Campbell had before and he had the touchdown. Yeah, that's not acceptable. And whether it's getting Danny Gray, who's got some juice, or Marcus Rosemead Jackson, who's young and got some juice, as opposed to rolling out the direct they're rolling out. Yeah, if you want to criticize the coaching staff, develop a player. They haven't developed a receiver in years. They got a finished product in A.J. Brown. They got a finished product, as finished as you can be coming out of college, in Devontae Smith. This goes back to Doug Peterson's era. This is an organizational problem.
Goes back to Andy.
In an era where, it goes all the way back to Andy. In an era where you can pick receivers off trees, this organization either has to trade a first-round pick for one, or take one with a top 10 pick,
or trade a third for a stinker.
Competency at the position. And when they lose, there's not another receiver. You know what your best? I know people get upset when I say, which is weird, because nobody's talked up AJ more than me, but they get upset when I say he's not the best receiver in football. That's probably Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson, maybe Jamar Chase. And he's, I put him in the same category, CeeDee Lamb. He's top 5. But he's not tippy top. And Devontae Adams in his prime, those types of guys. You lose this guy and you can't even play. I've never seen anything like it. The Kansas City Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill and won Super Bowls.
And they're better.
Well, then now we're shifting the conversation. Now we're getting, though, is it Jalen Hurts, who's not elevating? Not everybody is going to be top 5 caliber of talent. The guys in Kansas City aren't. The guys in Buffalo aren't. Those are elite quarterbacks that are making guys who are just guys look a lot better than they are. Is that the problem here? Is it the guys that are 3, 4, and 5, or is it that they're just not being elevated with the guys?
Let me tell you why Green Bay is the factory of quarterbacks. Wide receivers don't make their quarterbacks up there. The quarterbacks make the wideouts. Do you know in the last 43 years, the Green Bay Packers have drafted 1 first-rounder? The rest of them have been all late rounders. Devontae Adams was a second rounder. Their quarterbacks developed.
Aaron Rodgers was, it was Jordy Nelson. It was Randall Cobb. It was, Greg Jennings back. He was sort of like Barb. Yeah. And I
also feel the need. We also lost wide receiver 3 too, not just the top 2. Britton Covey was playing like the wide receiver 3. And by the way, don't even try and tell me for a second that Jahan Dotson is better than that dude. I watch Britton Covey get separation almost every time he's out there on the offensive side of the ball. Jahan Dotson has done none of that. We traded a 3rd-round pick for a guy who's not even close. I don't think he's even better than Britton Covey. And if he is, it's marginal at best.
No, I just know this. The great quarterbacks develop those. Here, let's do this too, John. And again, I know this is
real quick, Sills, because I want to let John run.
This is a little bit unfair, bud. And I brought this up last time, John. Look at the wide receivers Tom Brady, outside of the Tampa experiment, won Super Bowls with.
Yeah,
Julian Edelman, Amendola,
finally got Randy
Deion
Moss,
Branch,
and they didn't win with
Moss, and they didn't win the Super Bowl
season. Yeah, that was his best team. They didn't win.
Yeah, they didn't win. The other Super Bowls were won by Edelman, Amendola, Deion Branch. Troy Brown was a 2-way player. Great quarterbacks, Zander, in my opinion, are the guys who develop and make other guys around them better. To John's point, even if you're a stiff, your job as a quarterback, in my opinion, is to make D students into C students into B students, and B students into A students. That's why you're making $50 million.
Yeah, and
I think it's a problem that this team can't play offensively at all.
No shit.
Without AJ Brown.
Dude, the wheels come off.
At all. It's clunky, it's ugly, and people blame Brian Johnson, people blame Nick Sirianni, people blame everybody they want to blame. Now it's Kellen Moore. They can't play offense without AJ Brown. that is a stinking problem because there are other good players on this team and they should be better. And maybe you got to start looking at the quarterback.
John, before we let you go, I want you to put a wrap just on, your thoughts on the day. But I do have a question because Sills, I thought, brought up a good question. You're going 2-2 into the bye week. We don't want to sound the alarms because we saw what being 10-1.
Not a problem at all because you should have lost this game.
But here's the question. Are the problems that we're seeing now with this team, when you view, are they not all problems are created equal. Are they problems you look at and say that team can get this right and make a run? Or are they problems you look at and say, this isn't a Super Bowl team. These problems are way bigger than we're chalking them up to be, and they're not going to fix these problems for the end of the year.
Well,
I think some of them are bigger than we're letting on.
You could argue, and I saw people crowning Minnesota when it was 28-0 today, and they almost lost with a 28-point lead with the, and I talk about Brian Flores all the time. Stills talked about him. I love the guy. They gave up 400 passing yards. They were leaking oil. They hung on by the skin of their teeth. So who's great in this league that you can't overcome if you're playing your best football at the right time? Are the Eagles a Super Bowl contender right now? No. Can they be one in December when it matters? Yes. Certain guys got to stay healthy.
But John, they're in the bucket, like you said. They're in the bucket of all those teams because of, like you said, the war of attrition is still going to play a factor. We all know. Look at it now playing a factor for San Francisco and Philly and a bunch of the teams right now. Ask yourself this, Zander. If you were going to put teams, 10, 15 teams in a bucket, or maybe even 7 teams to win the NFC, would the Eagles be one of them?
They should be.
I would put them in there. The NFC, I mean, who do you think is really a dominant team in the NFC?
No, I mean, look, they're going to be because they have the talent. But I tell you what, the NFC's looking. I mean, look, there's no great team, but Falcons bounced back today with a win. The Saints looked competent again. The Packers, as John just mentioned, fought back. Minnesota's all of a sudden here. I don't think the Niners are as bad as they've been. I don't think the Lions are as bad. Okay. I mean, the Eagles, if they don't fix some of these problems, they'll be struggling to get into the playoffs.
I still think they're in the bucket.
But so many of the problems are solved by the presence of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Lane Johnson. Bang. There's just a whole bunch of problems solved.
Hey, Zander, I think you found out there with those 3 guys gone, those aren't just 3 dudes. They're 3 of the most elite guys.
It didn't take me from me today.
Wait, no. I'm not saying that. I'm just making a point here is that we're not talking about, like John said, the 3 best players on the Eagles. You're talking about the 3 best players, arguably at their position in the league. That is hey, I can have the best defensive tackle, but he may be the 20th guy in the league.
Right.
You're talking about the 2nd best offensive tackle, the 3rd best wideout, and you could flip the cards on that one. I mean, these aren't just dudes that weren't on the field today. They were some of the greatest players in the game today.
No doubt, John.
I think what, and I got to go, as you said, Zander, but I think what people should have learned today is you probably overrated the depth on this team.
Yes.
Probably is an understatement. John, just your final thoughts before we let you run.
Yeah, disappointing. You want to see him persevere a little bit better. Not a surprise they lost this football game at all. A little bit uglier, so the style points aspect. But guess what? Ugly, pretty, loss is a loss, win is a win. They lost this game. Probably should have lost this game. Not the end of the world. You get those 3 guys healthy. You start peaking at the right time, hopefully. But that said, they need to fix some stuff offensively, certainly defensively. Consistency is a problem on the defensive side. They're going to overcorrect when they do get the players back. And it's a bad week to have a bye week, not only because it's so early, but you want to get back out there to correct some of these issues, and they're not going to be able to do it. They're probably going to overcorrect and be better tackling coming out of the bye against Cleveland. And we'll see how that shakes out. But they need more consistency defensively. Obviously, they need a better pass rush. It's getting to the point where, you know, if Bick's not going to use him, you know, I don't know how he's got to walk into the office and have that difficult conversation and say, look, I paid this dude $51 million. Figure it out. Be the bad cop. So they need to fix some things on both sides of the ball. Offensively, in a weird way, I'm not as concerned because I think that has more to do with the players that were out.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Let's get to our commercial. John, thanks for joining in, man. You can drop up at it. Drop out of here. Thanks for doing it today, brother.
Thanks, guys.
All right, see you. There's Johnny Mac joining us on the post-game show. Good stuff from Johnny Mac.